My name is Jacob. I am a 38-year-old man like everyone else. My health started to suffer since I had been sick of the monotonous work grind since I was younger. I chose to retire early, before I was 40. I went back to my lovely seaside village, which I had left when I was 18, after 20 years away. I work 3 days a week as a fisherman and love fishing full-time now. John, my grandfather, introduced me to this line of work. My father was born the year after he married young. Even at my age, my father married young, so my grandfather, who is just 78 years old, is still a small-scale fisherman. He's thrilled to have me back because we used to spend a lot of time together when I was younger. He often takes me out on his little fishing boat now that I'm at home, and before I know it, he asks, "Why don't you take over for me?" He began to introduce me to the fishing industry. Since I had no intention of returning to my previous career, I reasoned that living a lifetime surrounded by nature wouldn't be all that horrible. I agreed right away, and we went fishing. However, it turned out that the years I spent watching my grandfather work and the real work I did were very different. To start with, everything has such an odd fragrance. Furthermore, everything demands a significant amount of physical strength, including cleaning the fish and pulling in the nets. It was difficult, even if at first I was only helping my grandfather, and I secretly complained, "I don't want to do this anymore." However, my grandfather would smile and ask, "Hey, what's with that pathetic look on your face?" When he saw my expression, "You'll never be my right-hand man at this pace. Come on, pull correctly and bend your knees." He always used this as a means of motivation because he knew how competitive I was. When I began taking sports seriously in school, it was the same. "Oh, so you're going to quit just because some old guy yelled at you?" My grandfather would say to me when I was about to give up, even though the coach and practices were quite harsh, "What is there to be proud of, really, when you're not very good at talking or studying? If you give up now, do you really think you'll accomplish anything? Make an effort and complete at least one challenging task." Now that I think about it, it was fairly harsh, basically telling his own grandchild that he was unworthy. My grandfather was correct, though. I think I would have carried a sense of inferiority and felt burdened by the regret of not giving my all in sports or academics if I had given up on the things I wanted to. The lesson I learned from having someone properly chastise me, assessing my shortcomings, and putting forth a lot of effort to close those gaps relates to both job and education. Furthermore, continuing with athletics allowed me to interact with a wide range of individuals of all ages and backgrounds. I believe that's what taught me how to talk to people who were completely different from me. My grandfather, who has always thought of me as awkward and slow, must have known that I would find it difficult to adjust to working life. He was adamant about keeping me in the sports club because of this. His intention was to fortify me. After facing the difficulties of adulthood, I can now truly comprehend his intentions. I was able to focus on my schoolwork later because of the sense of achievement I had from continuing with athletics. I landed a notoriously hard job, but my sports-related perseverance, physical strength, and people skills more than made up for my innate awkwardness. I was working nonstop in the city for a time, but after days of improper sleep, my body and mind began to deteriorate. I had aged prematurely and appeared considerably older than I actually was before I realized it. Despite being in my 20s, I appeared to be in my late 30s. I was fulfilled at the moment, respected by my coworkers, and liked by everyone around me. However, I would say no if you asked me if I would like to travel back in time. I think it's pointless when young people boast about how little sleep they get or how many hours they work, as I hear them do these days. In fact, when I pushed myself too much, my health checkups turned out badly. I resolved to stop caring about professional advancement and save as much money as I could since I was afraid I would become really sick. I turned in my notice of resignation. My managers made several attempts to stop me, but I refused to exchange my health and life for a job. I made a clear decision. I'm working with my grandfather right now to stay busy. Some would argue that even though it's a little more difficult than moderate employment, I'm still young enough to handle it. However, My body at that point would have been that of a person in their late 60s. I reasoned that it would be wiser to step down early and prolong my healthy years rather than wearing myself out while I still had some vitality. I had even heard tales of office workers who disregarded their health, which resulted in the development of cirrhosis and a death sentence in their 50s. My determination was strengthened even more by those tales. I'm okay with that, even if I won't get credit for saving more money or feeling like I've grown personally. Realizing that my greatest wealth is my health, which is also my most important possession. I was inspired to dive into the sea and catch a variety of seafood by witnessing my grandfather do it. I made the decision to become a full-time fisherman for this reason as well. I had to formally become a fisherman by joining the fishing cooperative in order to obtain seafood of that caliber. I consequently acquired the credentials I needed to dive into the adjacent sea and collect seafood, including abalone. There is a flourishing farming community on this island, with lots of fields and rice paddies. We had wonderful, fresh food every day and frequently traded different vegetables from the fields for seafood. My existence on the island became rather satisfying in this way. One day, while I was routinely strolling around the port with my fishing gear, I noticed something peculiar floating in the water. A large, pinkish-purple object. What is that? I pondered. It appeared strangely spherical and three-dimensional, unlike ordinary rubbish or clothing. I was staring at it when all of a sudden there was a splash and it began thrashing around. I was shocked to see that the pink object was a little girl, most likely in elementary school. This is not good. If I don't help, she will stink. I started running over the sandy shore after seeing her in such agony. I ran through the dunes and dove into the ocean. I waded through the waves and swam hard in the direction of the girl. I then understood why, when I was younger, my grandfather had hammered swimming into me so hard. Due to the lack of activities in the area, even young children often play by the lake. This kind of accidental seawater drowning occurs frequently, even in cases where parents take precautions. My grandfather trained me how to swim for extended periods of time in deep water, probably so that I would be able to leap in and save someone if necessary. I was really glad I had followed my grandfather's advice as I held the struggling girl and floated at the surface. But the girl was still flailing around, terrified. Hey, you will sink if you continue to struggle. You must become calm. Give up the struggle. She felt like she might escape my clutches at any time, but she was too distraught to hear me. A deep, booming horn suddenly sounded in the distance. Jacob, hello. Hold on to this. My grandfather saw what was happening and quickly sped in our direction in his boat. He threw us a life ring and shouted, "Ah, Grandpa, you're a lifesaver." I turned to the girl and yelled, "Look, help's here now." As I grabbed onto the life ring with all my effort, "You no longer need to battle because you will be all right." When the girl finally realized she was safe, she stopped thrashing. At last, I can unwind a little, I thought to myself. I grabbed the life ring and swam toward the boat, which was being towed along. I held the girl as she remained silent and fixed her gaze on a single point, obviously tired from her struggle. I hauled the girl out of the water as we approached the boat, and my grandfather hauled her up with his powerful arms. He exclaimed, "Hey, are you all right?" But the girl remained silent, taken aback by his stern tone. Grandpa remarked, "She might have drank a lot of water," after seeing her silence. "We ought to have her examined just in case. Let's visit the physician." He pulled me up, cranked the engine, and we were back on the beach in no time. I hastened to my belongings and dialed the biggest clinic on the island. After describing the circumstances, a young female doctor who had responded stated, "Let's have a look at her, just to be safe." To prevent the girl from becoming chilly, my grandfather hurriedly asked the locals whether anyone had any children's clothing. My hometown is on a little island. Everyone in this place knows one another as a result, and they constantly support one another. My grandfather was well known to all, and they were all eager to help. But with everyone getting older, it was difficult to locate someone who could fit a young girl in their clothes. Many of the younger families had left the island, and the local school had long since closed. Old children's garments have long since been discarded by the majority of the older people. But after a while, my grandfather finally located someone who might have some. He was given some clothing and a towel that belonged to their son by a couple in their 50s, who were regarded as young on this island. My granddad quickly made his way back to my car's parking spot. He ran back with the boy's clothes, which fit the girl because they were close enough in size. We gave them to her and urged her into the vehicle. We gave her a towel and made sure to cover the windows so she could have some privacy. Dry yourself off here, and take off those damp things. We're going to the doctor after that, I added. The girl had a scared expression. It's okay, I told her, grinning. There won't be anything spooky. Fortunately, it doesn't appear that you're injured. All we have to do is make sure you're okay. She closed the car door quietly, still appearing frightened. She started to dry herself off and change after a little while, and I heard her say, "Thank you," softly. "Whose child are you?" My grandfather questioned her once she had done dressing. She surprised us, though, by claiming she wasn't from the island. It makes sense why I didn't recognize you. How will we locate your parents, then? Grandpa remarked, becoming anxious. The youngster claimed she was here for the first time on a trip with her mother, but she couldn't recall her parents' phone numbers. She couldn't even pinpoint where they had split up. For a few while, we both stood there, reflecting. Her mother has to be searching for her as well. We reasoned that by now she must have contacted the locals and traveled to the police station. We planned to give each other a call later. Maybe the police station had already gotten in touch with us, or maybe we would hear back from the clinic. Keeping that in mind, we went to the clinic to have the girl examined. There once had been an elderly physician who managed the island's sole clinic. He was a skilled yet kind practitioner. But as he grew older, he experienced cardiac issues. He ultimately went back to work after a few sessions, but he gradually cut back on his clinic hours until he was unable to continue. At that point, a young female physician expressed her desire to take over the clinic. It was first questioned if we would be comfortable with such a young-looking, inexperienced doctor, but it turned out that she was about my age. Since none of his children had chosen to become doctors, he chose to commit the clinic to her because of her ability and vast experience. Her arrival was welcomed by the people, who had been concerned about the island's healthcare system's future. Despite its age, the facility exudes coziness because to its soothing wooden construction. Perhaps that's why the girl seemed to loosen up a little as we got closer to the building. The young doctor greeted us warmly and gently as soon as we opened the glass doors. "You must be Jacob, I see. Please enter," she pleaded. After hearing that, I entered the clinic. It had been tastefully refurbished inside. It astonished me. Its big windows and calm wood interior were memories of the place's previous gloomy floors stained black. The old bookshelves had been replaced as well, and were now stocked with senior citizen magazines. Gazing around, I was astounded by how much had changed, and I saw that the girl, who was still a little afraid, was following my grandfather cautiously into the examination room. "Never fear. There won't be anything spooky. You were saved quickly, so I'm sure you're okay." Grandpa patted her back tenderly. As the girl and the doctor entered the examination room, the tension in her face gradually eased. The examination's findings demonstrated that the girl's body was in excellent condition. We were relieved to hear the official outcome, even though we had assured her that everything would be all right. My grandfather called the police station during the exam, and sure enough, her mother had arrived and inquired about her. She had left for the clinic. The girl suddenly brightened when she heard this, giving me her first smile and asking, "Really? I'm grateful." Shortly later, we observed a woman sprinting wildly from outside the clinic toward it. "Wham. I really apologize. It appears that my daughter upset you." The woman was in her 30s and was panting from running. She was elegant and lovely. She reprimanded her kid before introducing herself as Lily. "Hey, did you tell these people your name and thank them properly?" she asked, turning to face the girl. The girl abruptly became aware and apologized, appearing to have just realized. Emily is my name. I sincerely appreciate your saving me." In response, my grandfather said, "No, no. Everything else doesn't matter as long as she's secure. And didn't you already thank us earlier? That kind of encounter makes you naturally forgetful. Take it easy on her." Lily repeatedly lowered her head and apologized once more. "You're Jacob, the one who saved my daughter, right?" she asked, turning to face me at that point. "Yes, that's right," I answered, assuming the police had told her. "I can't thank you enough for saving my daughter's life," she said. "I'm not even sure how to show my appreciation. Actually, there isn't a necessity. I simply followed everyone else's lead. No, I can't just end it there. I'm not sure what would have happened if you hadn't been there, but you saved her life. I sincerely appreciate it." She bowed repeatedly, tears welling up in her eyes. It's true that the girl might not have lived if she had persisted in her struggle. Actually, it happens frequently here that someone falls into the water and never comes back. Lily was probably blaming herself for not seeing her kid when they were close to the water. My grandfather added, "At her age, kids are full of energy," as I was at a loss for words. "It takes place. But next time, please use more caution." Lily nodded while wiping her tears. "Why did you go off to such a dangerous place by yourself?" she reprimanded Emily. Emily responded, "Well, the men looked like they were having so much fun swimming." Ah. I thought to myself, she must have seen us diving for abalone the day before. She must have reasoned that she could enjoy herself just as much as us if she dove into the sea. She had courage, though, for a child to jump into the water fully clothed, I had to say. We are certified divers with specialized training. The equipment you were wearing is completely different from what we wear. You realize now how dangerous it might be after entering the water while still wearing clothes, don't you?" Emily gave a faint nod. I then made her swear that she would never do that again. I claimed it was unnecessary, but Lily gave me an envelope, took Emily's hand, bowed, and walked away. She's quite the adventurous youngster, I thought to myself as I watched them go. She should return and receive the necessary training if she decides to attempt diving once more when she is older. My grandfather laughed as he looked at me after they had left. "Aha. With the swimming I taught you, you saved a girl, but you couldn't even get back on the boat by yourself due to your advanced age and inactivity. Child, you still have a long way to go. Hey, let me have a moment." I gave it my all in my response, giving him a little glare. During our chat, I noticed that someone was watching at us. I turned to face the young doctor who had just finished tying up after the exam and inquired, "Is something wrong?" She was staring at us really closely for some reason. She said, I didn't realize earlier because things were hectic, but your name is John, right?" My granddad was questioned by her. Yes, that's right." "Well, it's somewhat of a coincidence, but I was shocked to learn that you were John. My name is Mia. Do you still recall me?" My grandfather hesitated, thinking, then his eyes widened as she stared right at him. "Ah, Mia, from back then." After that, he started telling Mia things from his past. Mia had relocated to the island with her parents when my granddad was considerably younger. Back then, Mia had been a sickly child and frequently missed school, preventing her from attending courses with other students. Even when others made an effort to be kind, she found it more difficult to attend class the more she missed it, and the more alienated she felt from her peers. It was hard to get over that difference. Mia ultimately made the decision to concentrate on getting well and relaxing through middle school in order to enroll in a traditional high school. Even though her parents, who are both doctors, made sure she continued her education, she found it difficult to learn from her family members. Mia cried a lot of days since she was lonely and didn't have any friends at school. While strolling one day, she happened to see my grandfather happily swimming in the sea. Watching my grandfather swim with such abandon made Mia think, it must be so much fun to swim like that. My granddad waved her over after catching her eye. He swam over and started teaching Mia how to catch fish in the shallows when she ran to the edge of the water. She began seeing my grandfather on a daily basis after that, fitting shore excursions in between her coursework. Her parents let her play by the sea since they could tell it was strengthening her. Mia smiled again slowly as she spent more time in the natural world with my grandfather. Through her seashore activities, she also made acquaintances with neighborhood kids, making companions her own age. Mia's face at that point was entirely different from her arrival on the island. The pale, weak kid who had walked nervously while clutching her parents' hands had become a happy, active child basking in the sun. Mia was greeted without any obstacles by the friendly and hospitable island children, even though she wasn't from the island. Mia was able to make friends with them just as readily as she would have with her peers as a result. She told us that the negative emotions she was carrying around from the embarrassment with her peers began to go away because of my grandfather. She felt confident enough to go back to school because she had friends her own age. Her health steadily improved as she played with the island kids more and more. She no longer got sick from running around with them or fell from tiredness. After a while, her parents declared she was well enough to go, and a few days before she graduated from primary school, they made the announcement. After around 2 years, Mia's fun time on the island came to an end, and she returned to her hometown to start middle school. She begged her parents to let her attend middle school on the island since she loved it so much. Her parents, however, forbade it because they knew the island's middle school was failing, and they wanted their daughter to become a doctor. With tears in her eyes, Mia vowed to return to the island eventually. Mia went on to say that my grandfather had given her something more for which she was thankful. She had experienced hopelessness as a young girl, thinking she was forced to follow her parents' instructions. She didn't dislike the notion of being a doctor. Rather, she felt pressured to pursue it because her parents were in the medical field, as though she had no other choice. Even though I had my own will, I couldn't bring myself to say anything because they were my parents, and I didn't want to offend them. It was unimaginable for me to argue with them, because I was always respectful and serious, she remarked. My grandfather said to Mia, who had shown dissatisfaction with her desire to become a doctor, "Look, no parent is going to abandon their child just because they get upset during that period. Granted, some parents are bad, but yours don't seem to be one of those. Did they come to this island specifically for you? For it, they even took time off from work. Few parents would go to that extent. Thus, perhaps if you are sincere with them, things will gradually improve. They may not change their wishes, but if you demonstrate your independence, they will see that you are capable of leading a fulfilling life without becoming a doctor. They will comprehend if they truly love you." Inspired by his remarks, Mia informed her parents that she would choose to attend public middle school rather taking the admission tests for private schools. She later made the decision to become a doctor after discovering, via internet research, that there weren't many medical facilities available on the island. My grandfather appeared shocked, not realizing that this was the reason Mia had come back to the island as a physician. Hearing about my grandfather's prior involvement in her life astonished me as well. My grandfather smiled gently and said, "I see you, Mia. You really did care about this island. It's true that not much remains on this island, and none of us anticipated the arrival of a young physician. It was a major problem when the previous doctor passed away, and everyone was concerned about what the government would do. I assumed they would just send a doctor who didn't want to be here, at random, from a university hospital. But you're not like that, Mia. In addition to being an accomplished physician, you are always so sweet and smiling with the islanders. You are nothing less than a savior to us. For the good of this island, I thank you for pursuing medical school, but I apologize if we have placed too much pressure on you." Mia shook her head and declared that she knew she had to return to this island, whether or not she became a doctor. Being a doctor was really the only thing she could do here, and she was fine with that because the only jobs available are farming, fishing, and medicine. "I'm sorry I cried so much back then, and thank you for always helping me, like that time when I slipped into deep water or when I tripped over that huge sea cucumber," she continued, her shy but endearing grin on her lips. Thank you so much for that. Mia appeared sincere in her happiness at seeing my grandfather. My grandfather then grinned and remarked, "Oh, and Jacob used to be a doctor too." Jacob, what are your thoughts? Mia is going to have a hard time managing things by herself. What if you occasionally helped her out in the clinic when you took a vacation from fishing? At the time, Mia was 35 and I was 38, and we were both unmarried. He was making a point, and I understood it when Mia flushed and replied, "It's true that handling emergencies by myself can be difficult, so I'd appreciate any help you can offer." Despite having retired, I ended up continuing my medical practice because I was unable to refuse. Nevertheless, I was happy that my abilities hadn't declined too much. If I had waited a few years after retiring, things could have turned out differently. It might be too late to help in some circumstances if I couldn't do surgery correctly. It seemed to me that a physician who was unable to provide care for patients who were unable to go to the mainland's larger hospital would be of little use. But things weren't as busy here as they were at my last job, so I thought I could handle it. In addition, I was motivated to assist others in need, which is why I accepted my grandfather's recommendation. Even though there were times a year later when it felt like Mia and I were getting someplace, we never went over that boundary. We still collaborate well as good colleagues at the clinic. Even though things didn't work out romantically, I suppose that's just me. Conversely, my grandfather couldn't contain his disappointment and remarked, "Well, that's a shame. I used to believe that my work was over, but having obligations and receiving gratitude every day gives life a true meaning. I now understand why some elderly people want to work for the rest of their lives, even if they work in chain stores or healthcare facilities. Saying thank you to others and trying to bring smiles to their faces are significantly more satisfying than pursuing my own interests on my own. I think I figured out what matters most in life, thanks to my grandfather and Mia. I go back to the small country clinic today, bearing that in mind."